Welcome to the, I believe it's the sixth State of Marketing Roundtable webinar. Today we are talking all about different things with reaching a global audience. Today we're joined with Ryan, myself as the moderator. We've also got Mark and George, partners at Applied Art, Shannon Quinn, our business development manager, and our guest panelist today, Aaron Johnson. So I'm going to introduce him in a second, but if you're just popping on again, make sure to go to the bottom of your screen and see all the different options for the Zoom chat. We really try and take advantage of the fact that everybody's live on here, and we want to answer your questions as they come up and make sure that we're giving you guys some good answers to your questions right away. So make sure to go to the bottom of your screen and put in any of those questions you have in the chat, and we'll get to those as we answer some of these questions here. So our guest presenter today is Aaron Johnson. He's the VP of Marketing for Accumold here in Ankeny, Iowa. And I let him kind of give himself a brief introduction, but he does a lot of things with international audiences and with their business and how they do things. And with travel, we'll definitely have a lot of good stuff to talk about today. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen here. We'll go back to the grid here. And Aaron, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you guys today. It's a lot of fun. It's just amazing how the globe has learned to do Zoom meetings so effectively these days. And as Ryan said, my name is Aaron Johnson. I've been the VP of Marketing at Accumold here for about 15 years. If you're not familiar with Accumold, we're a micro injection molder. We focus on making high precision, small plastic components for a wide variety of markets. Medical device is one of the markets that we serve extensively. It's also one of the reasons we've been fortunate during this particular time that we've been deemed an essential business. And so, we've still been working. We've allowed most of the folks that can work from home to work from home, but we're manufacturing. So we've been able to maintain that because we serve a wide medical device market that just has to continue. I don't know how well these will come across, but our maybe that'll focus. We focus on parts about this size, a little bit bigger in some respects, and a little bit smaller in a lot of ways. And they're what we consider critical components. They're high precision down to micron level accuracies. And so, it's kind of a niche market. And because of that, people come from all over the world to Ankeny, Iowa to, find their components that go in their medical device, microelectronics, micro optics, all sorts of, sophisticated high-end electronics. And so it's really created a fantastic business for us, and a niche within the injection molding world, and is sought after worldwide.
Absolutely. I know it's really interesting too, some of the different places you traveled. Just give us a quick rattle off of some of the different countries you've been to in the last couple of years.
Well, it's mostly Europe. We focus on where the design centers are. A lot of our big customers, they have maybe their sales and marketing and headquarters in California. They have design offices in Europe and manufacturing in Asia. And so we're dealing with all of those in a lot of ways, because while we might be starting off with their product development team, then it goes to their design team in Europe. And then when we actually make the product, we're shipping it over to their manufacturing sites, wherever those might be. And so as a team at Accumold, we're all over the globe all the time. From the sales and marketing side, it tends to be more Americas and Europe, though we have spent time in Southeast Asia, in Singapore, Japan, South Korea, some of the other tech markets that, we've been supporting as well. And the joke used to be everybody wants to be in marketing, and I have no reason to complain. I thoroughly enjoy what I get to do and the things I get to see. Because, when we're doing like trade shows and conferences, they're usually in places people want to go. They want the attendees to want to go there too. So I've had some colleagues that might work for John Deere, and they're telling me about being in the middle of nowhere, supporting a farmer on a field. And, I get to go to Paris and London and some of those other kind of fun places to be. So I certainly can't complain about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's super fun. Just some of the different experiences you guys can have too. I know, just again, if you guys have any questions that are attending, make sure to drop them in the Q&A as we get going here. I know you mentioned doing some different trade show stuff. So that was one of the main things we wanted to talk about today was your guys' virtual trade show that you did. Maybe walk some people through what you typically do with your in-person trade shows and what drove you guys to start looking at doing a virtual option for people.
Yeah, trade shows for us are a big part of our marketing scheme. Because we're in the product development phase, we have a long sales cycle. We also have kind of an innovative technology that we're continuing to, show to the world and educate the world. I usually say we help companies do, things in the same space or more and less, and just helping them understand what that looks like, and just showing our parts to potential customers is a big part. So that in-person piece is important for us in some of those initial conversations. So with, the travel and the trade shows all postponing, that was a big part of our marketing scheme that we kind of had to shift on. And in mid-March, as we were, kind of kicking around some ideas, what should we do? What would be effective? I don't know what kind of made me think of it, but we have actually a trade show booth that we used to use that we now just use as a display within our front office. I thought, you know what? Maybe I could just record this little bit like I'm at a show. And it seemed really simple to me when the idea came up. And, fortunately for me, I have a background in, audio visual, so I have at least a measure of experience and skill with it, though I tend to like to be on the other side of the camera than in front of it, so there's that piece of it. But so I thought, well, okay, I'll just set up my iPhone on a tripod and just kind of walk through. Well, one thing leads to another. Well, I can't, it's got to, so it actually became more than I expected it to be. But I had this idea. Well, a lot of our customers, they're now, working from their home offices, and they're focused on just design things. They're still, trying to get work done. And I thought, well, that doesn't mean innovation has to stop. So, I put together this little virtual trade show, put it on my LinkedIn as one avenue, and then also sent it out to our sales guys to work with their networks. And that was my kind of first kind of foray into it. And I knew that a lot of my LinkedIn contacts were my media outlets, the trade show folks, the publications that I'm involved with, and other trade media connections. Well, maybe a few of them might find it interesting, pick it up. And that's happened. In fact, I had one of our major suppliers just yesterday reposted on their marketing channel for one of the resin suppliers that we use, and that was kind of fun and a big deal. And so it's kind of taken on a life of its own and been, kind of this, I expected, I guess, when I first did it, well, I got to get this done because everybody's going to do this. And once everybody does it, then it just becomes part of the noise. And I haven't seen a lot of it. And I've had great feedback from it. And it's just been one of those fun things that, would have never needed to do this or thought about it before, but because of the situation, took advantage of what I had and the skills that I had and kind of put it together, and kind of here we are.
Because what were some? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Shannon.
I think it's interesting too that you find people don't really care how highly produced it is. I mean, you did it. It's more we're also humanized. It's easy. People are just happy to see things. It didn't have to be this big overdone production to get responses. And I think that's important for people to recognize and embrace right now more than ever.
Absolutely. Not that long ago, you would, these kind of, you'd see interviews on national broadcasts, and, they'd be wearing their jacket and tie, and then, oops, they stand up and you find out they're wearing shorts, or the kid comes in. And famously, there was a British, presenter from his house, and his kid comes in, and you see him kind of doing this, trying to get his kid to go away. Well, we laughed about that because it was unusual. Now, this whole thing has changed how we perceive that. We're seeing into people's rooms and offices, and what offices like we've never had before. And so I think you're exactly right. There's a human element. I wanted it to be done well, but it didn't need to be this Hollywood production. I just want and that's an important piece to it. It's just try to do it as honestly and as casual as you can. And that can be as equally effective,
Yeah, I think the key is to be authentic is more easy to embrace than something that's overdone.
Right. And I put a little bit of the kind of, I don't know, cheesy humor into it a little bit just to keep it light and not take it too serious. And like I said, I've had a lot of fun with it, and we've gotten good mileage out of it so far.
And so you would say that it's been a successful foray for you.
Absolutely. In fact, I was just talking with a colleague this morning that even if you counted my my YouTube views of what it says, unique views, is more than a couple of trade shows that I've missed. Then if you throw in there the branding value I got, because last I looked, I had over 4,000 views on my LinkedIn profile. I don't even have that many connections. So it's kind of moved its way out. And so at the very least, my name went by, or Accumold's name went by. And so I got some branding value out of it. And now that we have a supplier doing it and a few of my other colleagues and trade publications doing it, I'm getting a little bit more of that mileage out of it. And I would say it's been very successful from just a branding and visualization process.
Aaron, I'm curious. What are, you're primarily B2B. What other things do you find are working right now?
Well, so we have a couple colleagues that we work with in Europe, and I've had weekly Skype calls with them for 5 years, and so this was not much of a change. And I was talking with them because Friday mornings is our normal time. I was talking with them early this morning about in March, April, and maybe a little bit now, we were seeing that, okay, this whole newness of work from home and people are still trying to figure out what to do, how to be productive, has slowly morphed back into a more distractive mode. So we were, early on, I think we were able to capture attention quite easily. People were answering their phones. They were looking for something to do, to connect with. People were eager to, respond and connect. I think as we've all settled in and as things start to open up again, that phenomenon is going to fade away again. So for now, we just tried to capitalize and getting a hold of people, and it's been very effective. And I think, again, as I kind of mentioned, the whole world now knows how to use Zoom or what have you. There's a easier, faster receptiveness to it. We're fairly used to WebEx meetings, but not the visual side. And so many more people are turning on their webcams because it's become, more, acceptable or more familiar. They're not as timid by it. And I think that's helped raise even just the connectivity levels of some of the past customers that we're not used to seeing necessarily when we're communicating with them.
For sure. One of the questions too I had was just with some of these people that are more timid to try some of these things, do you think the situation's pushing them to at least try it? Because I know if somebody brought up, hey, you should do a virtual trade show, I'm sure a lot of people would say, oh, I can just do them in person. What's kind of your experience with that and how you think things are pushing?
Oh, absolutely. The example that I was talking with someone the other day about is that, with schools being closed, every teacher had to figure out how they were going to deliver their content online. And there were teachers that were, used to and using media in their classroom already, and the ones that didn't. But when you had to kind of all go that way, it kind of showed there was different experiences and skill levels out there. And this whole process, I think, not only in school systems, but in business, has kind of raised that tide, forced people to do a few things that they hadn't been done before. And then, like a lot of things, once you kind of do it once or twice and you see that it's not really that big of a deal, or it's fairly easy, I keep telling our CEO, it's a skill that we're not going to forget just when the world opens back up again. And even meetings that we have within our own building, because we're practicing social distancing, we're staying in our offices and having these connections. We're a Microsoft Teams company, and so we've had it for a long time, but it was barely used, just a few of us. Now everybody's on it every day. We don't lose that skill. So I'm really hoping and expecting to see that kind of experience kind of move forward in industry and even in the school system.
I know from a sales perspective, I certainly look forward to that. It's much easier to jump on and have this kind of an exchange I want it to be personal. I want it to be face-to-face because that level of engagement is deeper. But people are more inclined to spend 15 minutes doing this rather than trying to schedule a meeting for me to come to their office or for them to come to my office. It's a layer of complication that this has actually helped to eliminate.
Yeah, it definitely kind of brings up the middle times. Yeah, you're gonna, we have an in-person, sales process. It's important for us initially, but those in-between pieces where you can enhance the relationship and the conversations is definitely something that we can take forward. And again, more people now are used to it, and now it just seems every day.
Yeah, because one of the things that's different in doing something like this versus a phone call is you do have a much more personal connection. You will get a more personal connection with whoever you're speaking with because you're seeing them, you're interacting with them. It's much different same style of communication, but it's much more effective and different than just being on the phone.
Well, and what I found funny is I have a couple of my media partners that I have regular conversations with. They'll get on a WebEx and they'll show me some stats of maybe how a program that I'm doing is working. Done that for years with them, and it's only during this time that I've actually seen them because now they've decided they can turn their camera on. They could have always, but we didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm disappointed when I can't see you. So
exactly. I think, and that's going to be going forward. I think that's going to be, you're going to see that more often.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had seen an interesting tidbit about demographic change that previous to this, a lot of people didn't turn their cameras on because they were doing other things around. And so you notice that you may consider to be distracted. And it came down to an age demographic of people that were above 30, mid 30s and above. We tend to, so I'm in that category. We tend to think that if I'm having this
Slightly above,
maybe just a little.
Ryan's the only one that's not in that category.
What are you talking about?
That, it's considered rude to not look at the person while you have them. So that, I think, is why cameras weren't used very often previously. And then in the demographics of the 30s and below that's their standard communication. They don't consider it to be rude or disrespectful to be working on something over here and looking and checking in and looking and checking in. And I think we'll see that change. And I think now that demographic will start to move up. People will continue to do this, but I know in our transitions of meetings that we've been doing, I will have my camera set up, but I will be responding to other things while we're carrying on a meeting because I'm not necessarily engaged completely all the time. So as someone else, two people are having a conversation that doesn't really include me, I can back out, step out, but I'm still there.
Yeah, I don't know that we've fully fleshed out that I totally see that and agree with just knowing the demographics of some of the meetings I've been in. And I was joking earlier about now I feel like I have to sit up because I can see how bad I slouch. So I think over time, I think it will retreat back to a more casual atmosphere, and that will flesh itself out. But it's interesting now, I feel compelled to look at you when I'm talking to you, especially in an environment like this. Or I've been on some group team meetings and I'm conscientious of, well, should I be looking or not? Should I be looking at my email? Should I be looking at my phone? It is an interesting extra dynamic that you can get away with without the camera. So very curious to see how that eventually plays out more long term.
Yeah, plus we got over the phobia of, I can't show my office now that people are working from their homes or their bedrooms or whatever it is. Now your office looks pretty good, right?
Right. And of course, all the fun with the virtual backgrounds I've seen.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think at this stage, all pride is gone because everybody's hair needs cut, colored or something. It's just, you got to just forget it. Everybody's in the same boat. There's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah. This is my COVID haircut. I've always threatened to go full Mark, if you will, but I stopped at the number 2. I'm like, okay, that's close enough. And I had to have my wife help clean it up a little bit. But yeah, you have to do what you got to do. And it's whether it's your haircut or your marketing scheme, you got to figure out how to respond in an effective way. So.
Hey, Aaron, what would you suggest from a marketing standpoint people should be doing right now, either immediately or with the eye of how things are going to change and how they want to be strategic and position themselves later on?
Right. I think there's 3 main things. One is don't stop. There's maybe a tendency to want to pull back or panic a little bit about what you can and can't do. So you just need to not stop and move forward and figure out what that next step looks at. The second most important thing is to make sure you're still true to your brand. There are so many things that people are doing right now, and it seems like the trend. Well, does that trend match what your brand says you are, or how you're going to connect? And some of those things you could experiment with, and some of those things just don't fit. So you don't have to force a square peg into a round hole just because the circumstances are different. But like with the virtual trade show, it was an experiment, something I could do easily, something that we had in house, and was just using what we had in order to make a connection with the media that we already have, and just doing something a little bit different. And so there's and then there's I think the third option is to make sure I guess you call it sharpen the saw. During this particular time when we're not traveling so much, that means I have more time in the office to do some of those projects that have been slow or on the back burner. And for us, what we've been doing is working with our international group, and we've started to enhance our translations on our website to bolster our foreign presence on SEO. We've done some specific language targeting through some LinkedIn and other social media advertising that we weren't doing before, but gave us an opportunity, again, just maybe take a little tweak to what we're currently doing, focus on some of our international markets, and again, get a little bit benefit out of it, but then we also carry that forward. That's something that now that we've got kind of raised the bar on our general content during this time, it's going to help us moving forward. It's not just for now. There are going to be the just for now type of things to do. This is a phenomenon, and eventually it'll work into whatever they're saying is the new normal. But what is it that you can take advantage of now that you didn't really have before, because the attention span was different? And that's going to mean different things to different people. But again, the overriding core is stay true to your value proposition and make sure that your addressable audience, they haven't changed. How they're receiving you or where they're receiving you might be different, and that's just where you need to figure out how to connect.
That's exactly right.
For sure. Yeah, because I know before off camera you'd mentioned, there's no one like silver bullet. Like you had a really great response on LinkedIn with your virtual trade show, but not everybody watching this webinar should go and do a virtual trade show. It's not going to fit for everybody. I know a lot of times people focus on like certain channels, whether it's LinkedIn or Facebook. What have you guys seen for your B2B business in relations to Facebook and then also LinkedIn, and kind of how you market using those platforms differently?
Yeah, I mean, for us as B2B, we focus mostly on LinkedIn, and we've been growing that. We take a pretty strong educational content, strategy, if you will, and using our sales team and their connections as the power users with our potential customers, and just making sure that they have good content to share. Every time we have something that we can share, they get some interest on their network. And because we're a niche, portion of the larger manufacturing chain, potential customer doesn't need us every day. We just need to be ready and available when they are. And just that, slow drip of this particular content, So, obviously we've just enhanced that a little bit more this time in the video. It was something out of the ordinary from what they were used to seeing from us and fit the moment. And so that, gave us that little extra boost that we were able to take advantage of. You know, somebody once said 50% of your marketing dollars are wasted. You just don't know which 50%. And we're constantly kind of trying to chase that. And I think sometimes there's a tendency to think, oh, competitor A did X, so I've got to do that. Or I've seen this type of thing out in the marketplace. Oh, I've got to do that. And looking more for a formula. And you can glean from what others are doing. You just have to, again, go back to your own value proposition, your own addressable audience, and recognizing how is that going to be received by the people you're trying to interact with. And it really does have to be look through your own lens and not just the Me Too copycat type of thing. We've been joking in our family about, you know, creating a silly drinking game around every time you hear the phrase "in these challenging times" or "in these uncertain times." I mean, every commercial you're hearing is using one of those two phrases. And so I was listening to a podcast the other day about how we've just now gotten fatigued over that, right? So, you know, whether it's this particular topic or any topic that you might be talking about in your own kind of sphere, don't fatigue your audience, you know, and keep it fresh as much as you can.
For sure. Yeah, I think those are great. We actually had a question come in as well, asking about if you're trying to do more, they're looking for advice for global marketing, if their audience is more state or region based. So if they're B2B and they're typically working within, say, the state of Iowa or the Midwest, how do they expand their reach to more of a national audience or even international, especially if they're doing more things more digital or virtual?
Well, there's a couple of ways to approach that. There's certainly the state of Iowa actually has some good resources through their economic development to help exports, and we've taken advantage of those over the years. They've got a marketing export program, they've got a trade show marketing program, so those are easy resources for us in Iowa to take advantage of. We actually work with the firm I mentioned earlier in Europe. Their specialty is helping U.S. manufacturers, or not just manufacturers, grow in Europe. That's what they focus on. And they do everything from market research to boots on the ground to even full-on employment HR, depending upon, you know, what scale and what type of product or service that you're providing. And then the other one is back to that addressable audience. Are they other places? We started slowly, probably 25 years ago. One of our big market sectors is hearing aids. And if you can imagine, small little devices, lots of little plastic pieces. Well, the major players are in Europe and in North America. So we just started hitting on some of the competitors, if you will, the customers that we had in the US. It was an easy way in because they could get a comfort level. Hey, we know your market space, we know your product, we know how to build parts for that, and start making those connections. Because today, more than ever, the globe is small. I mean, and I come across that more and more and more every day. How easy it is to connect with the rest of the world. And as Americans, we're fortunate in one sense that English is the international business language. And at least in tech services and some of the more sophisticated markets, it's not necessarily exclusive English, but connecting with colleagues is very easy. In fact, I don't know why, but I'm still always baffled when I leave a team meeting at some customer in Europe. And if there's 8 people in the room, there's 7 different European countries represented, and their own common language is English. And so I think there's a few little maybe myths about what those barriers are to doing international business that really aren't there. And seek some advice, maybe more one-on-one advice from people that have started to do it, and connecting you to those resources. You'd be amazed at how quickly you can find yourself doing international business.
Absolutely. And if you guys have any more questions, again, if you're on live as an attendee, feel free to drop them in the Q&A so we can answer them for you guys.
I think that's a really good point, Aaron, that and maybe in our mind it seems a lot different, but they still need the services and products that we provide here. It's just that we were always limited geographically, right, before, and not so much anymore.
No, not at all. I mean, I've spent more buying a plane ticket to go to California from Iowa than I have to going to London from here, you know. So, you know, relatively speaking, it's fairly inexpensive. Again, it can be intimidating, but if you find a partner to work with that's already over there, or, you know, ease your way into that, you'll find that it can be very comfortable.
Absolutely. Sounds like we're all going to go on big trips after this whole quarantine's over.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, for somebody who's used to be on the road a lot, it's definitely, you know, gone a little stir crazy, and had to funnel those energies elsewhere, like that video.
You know, one of the things that we sometimes talk about is when this is all over, if you know, when and if that happens, how is marketing and sales going to be changed? What's going to be different? What are some potential opportunities going forward? What do you think about that?
Well, obviously there's lots of interesting opportunities, and literally this morning I got a voicemail from a production company that puts on a trade show that we would potentially participate in, and they're talking about how they're going to do it virtually. Well, virtual trade shows have been around for a long time. They've been trying to dabble with it, and they've just not found any to really stick, because it wasn't a need, and so that need didn't really foster any kind of wherewithal and critical mass when it comes out. Now with all this, as we've been kind of talking about how every day this seems, there might be more opportunity, more propensity for those types of events to be more effective, or to actually survive and be useful, because there still is a travel challenge even in normal days of people getting out of their offices. I was talking with another trade show organizer yesterday, and one of their big shows is in Jacob Javits in New York that we go to every year. And we were, talking about how do you get attendees. We've had actual customers interested that had offices, not kidding, 4 blocks from Javits Center, that we couldn't get them to come down the street. Their lives are busy. They just don't want to peel away. And I think, Shannon, like you said earlier, maybe just picking up the video chat or whatever for a few moments would be something they would be willing to do, than the idea of having to leave their offices. So I think there's a potential there. I don't know if that'll play out, but there's definitely more potential now than ever before for these type of virtual events to, get some, legs underneath them and do something. Another interesting thing is that there's some speculation, or how are trade shows going to be, post-pandemic, if you will. Some are speculating that they're actually going to be more pointed, more personal, and less just come and sit in a large group and hear a keynote, and might be more valuable to those that are exhibiting, especially if they're into niche markets and technologies that people are after. Again, I think there's opportunity there. We'll see how that plays out. And certainly, I think, as we've already shared a few times, video, more personal interactions with your brand, I think I think that'll persist for a good long time, if not the new normal, for a lot of folks.
One thing that we found interesting just doing these webinars, I mean, before this, if we would try to get 8 people together for lunch, it would have been really tough. But we can have a really great conversation with a bunch of people, and it's really at a very low cost to their time and travel and budget. And we've really, the transfer of information has been really great.
I have a couple of colleagues here that I literally have lunch with regularly, and we just keep up to date. I kind of consider them kind of mentor colleagues and whatnot. I've actually scheduled what I literally called virtual lunches, and we sat and ate our peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in front of each other. We just chatted and had a casual time. Again, we have never connected over video because we're local, and there's no reason why we can't. Right? Again, it's just this, wait a minute, we could do this, and it's fun, it's easy. We both have the technology, and we literally just had our sandwiches and kind of felt like we were together. And there's no reason why those types of things can't transfer its way into our business lives.
Absolutely. We'll have just a couple more minutes left, guys. If you have any more questions for Aaron, feel free to put them in the Q&A. I wanted to go back to, I know Mark had mentioned in some past webinars about some of the virtual tours and stuff that you guys were talking about, trade shows and those types of things. And Mark, you'd mentioned in a couple webinars ago that you think there will be a virtual component to most live events going forward. Just to kind of elaborate on that a little bit more and maybe fill some folks in on where you think that's going to be going in the future.
Yeah, I think we'll see I think they're beginning to determine as a hybrid event where you'll still have the in-person someone there, people will want to come, but you will also expand your look out. You'll bring people that aren't at the physical show into your booth space and using a number of different tool sets. Plus it would allow having the virtual or the live allows a Q&A that's very similar to the in-person experience, but slightly different, but much better than just doing a broadcast out, such as like a Facebook Live. Not that you can't have two-way communication with that, but you have to plan for that. You have to have the moderator or someone that's watching the chat or the Q&A, depending on your tool set, to then give that to a presenter. And I also think you'll schedule live, and this may or may not be at a physical event, but I think we'll see more, the scheduled live review of whatever with product expert A, B, and C. I think we're seeing a lot more of that. I know I'm seeing a lot more of that coming down. Hey, if here's a piece of hardware or here's a piece of software, we're here to help you. Let's schedule an event. You're having questions. And I've had set out a Q&A. So I've just hit their website with a question. I've gotten a response back with a link to actually be a part of a webinar or a Zoom call of something like that. So I think that's will continue to develop. These tools will continue to develop. They will become much more sophisticated, easy to use, but have more sophistication for us in the business side.
No, I totally agree. In fact, one of the first comments I got back from my virtual trade show is like, hey, why don't you do that as a LinkedIn Live or Facebook Live type of thing? And I really started to scratch my head around that I literally could set up a time and stand at my booth and just have my AirPod in and wait for somebody to join in if they want to join. So then he and I actually had a conversation a few weeks after that as we were exploring some ideas. He's been in the event promotion side of things, and we were talking about exactly that, a hybrid. Okay, these shows, at least for the next 6 months, there's going to be a certain, group that don't want to come for one reason or another, but it doesn't mean they can't still participate. You could create a kiosk with a step up to the virtual show. You have some kind of prompt that, would let you know that somebody's at your virtual stand to have that conversation and engage them, just like you would anywhere else. And I think there's a lot of potential for that, and we'll see. If the trade promotion companies and then the organizers and the support systems behind it, like the video teams and the booth manufacturers and the service providers that kind of put that all together, could somehow create this kind of virtual package. I totally can see it. We'll see if shows kind of jump there, because it's going to require, the back end, the show to want to do it, and then the exhibitors to want to do it, right? There's a lot of pieces there that had to fall together.
And the attendees, and then having
right. And you have to have people come, right?
And having the bandwidth. Right now Zoom has, and most of the meeting type softwares have reduced what the actual physical size of the image. So right now we're streaming out, but it used to be that you could do it at full HD.
Right.
Now you're down to 360 because of the amount of bandwidth that is needed. So, and I think that part of that, balloon will have to open back up. And then you're right, it's also at the facilities. The amount of bandwidth, if everyone starts to, that's at a typical trade show, starts to do a virtual side, that's going to put a huge draw on their infrastructure.
Yeah, so I definitely think there's the theoretic is there, and certainly people now have an experience with it that be more maybe willing to try it or see the value in it. But we'll see how that plays out. I'm curious as well to see how the next, the July through December kind of play out for us in terms of the shows that will go on, and what kind of audience we get and what kind of interaction there's going to be.
Exactly.
It looks like Susan has a question.
Yeah, she had 3 kind of run-on questions here as we're talking about trade shows. This is all super relevant, so I like that exchange, so I didn't want to break that up. We're talking about kind of having some virtual component to this. One of the other pieces was having maybe like the last 2 hours of your trade show be reserved for like the Zoom audience. So maybe we can talk about that, having like set hours for that. And then also talking about how people are kind of set to, like, they're packing up at 3 o'clock. If the show ends at 3:01, everybody's loading their stuff up and you can't get time with people. Exactly. So maybe we can talk about how some of these virtual things can solve some of those problems. And then of course the bandwidth that you use at some of these places when everyone's tapped into the internet access at these shows, and it's really hard to use the internet. So,
well, I think you can, as a standalone, I could do this. I could pull this off. I could create, at my own, stand by myself. But, I go to an event because I want the show organizer to bring me people I don't know.
Right.
If I already know them, I can communicate with them anywhere, right? And so I could do it on my own, but then I got to bring my own audience, or kind of come up with some other marketing scheme outside of their own shows, scheme marketing about doing this with us at the show. So while again, I think you could do it that way, I think it'd have to be kind of best if it was synergistic with the event itself. So then, I think you're exactly right. I think the time frame would make it a lot more logistically feasible than just trying to monitor something all day, and then you have kind of a window where people can jump in and out. The end of the show, I don't know. I think that's always going to be a tough one for the sales team. As soon as that last hour rolls out, and our rule is always you got to wait for the packaging tape in the halls to be heard, then the show is winding down. And I think that'll probably also have that same effect for the online part of it as well. So
yeah, and I think it's about communication. Communicating to your audience that you will be, either you have someone that is actually watching the stream and then going to a subject matter expert, okay, or you schedule and then you make sure that people are actually watching that. The show that, one of the last shows that we did, we had a whole war room that was just social media, tracking everything that was coming on all the social media channels so that they could instantly respond to anything positive or negative to be able to push it. And I think that kind of thing could happen for the virtual side. And back to bandwidth, that's always going to be the challenge. And bandwidth at trade show environment is expensive.
Well, and it's hit or miss on quality too sometimes.
And the major facilities recently in the past 2 years, I really haven't had as many challenges. But also you have to think through these. You got to back away from a wireless to a wired connection because there's just so much pollution in that environment that because you think if you have the facilities Wi-Fi, and then everybody who walks through with a cell phone potentially is using that as a Wi-Fi. So the bandwidth that we have for Wi-Fi is so limited right now. I think
even for this little meeting, I made sure I was on a hardwired machine because sometimes definitely struggles there with the Wi-Fi bandwidth.
And maybe what happens is, instead of your whole team on the trade show floor, maybe part of your team is not at that location. There's some place where they have bandwidth, but they're also part of the whole trade show experience.
Oh yeah, I think there's a lot to explore with this idea, and be curious again to see which media companies and trade show promoters and again, the service providers kind of put this type of package together. I mean, everybody knows the lead retrieval companies. There's about 3 or 4 of them out there, and they support just about every show out there. Well, there can be a similar type of thing. This just could be the new normal. Here's your virtual package that goes with this package, and this is just what we do. And again, theoretically, it's possible, and be curious and interested in to see, because obviously it's all about that. Back to what you were saying earlier, Mark, the connection and the communication. We're just looking for the best, most efficient ways to connect with potential customers and our current customers.
I could see staying back in the hotel and doing a quick fly over the trade show and then deciding who I wanted to really go talk to.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and one of the run-on questions here from Susan as well, she was saying that it might affect the pricing as an attendee as well. You might have a virtual option and then have an in-person option, because then you'd save some of the cost of having to travel and stay there in the hotels and those types of things too. So
yeah, so charge them more for the virtual.
Well, yeah, we all know though there is a critical mass to an event. You're going to spend all that time and effort to build a stand and rent the space, and you want people there, right? And so there's going to have to be some kind of happy balance. I'm not expecting vast audiences in the next few months. And so we're going to approach our shows maybe a little bit differently, just to kind of balance what we would maybe normally do in personnel or other accoutrement that we might bring to a show, that maybe we balance that a little bit to just kind of expecting. But there is a reality to the cost side, of course, to any of these events that obviously have to play into this equation as well.
For sure. Awesome. Well, I think we wanted to be mindful of everybody's time. So the last question here before we're done for Aaron, what's some of your final advice for marketers and just folks that are doing B2B business? Maybe some tips that you would suggest to them coming out of this pandemic, some things they should be mindful of as we start to get back to normality here.
Wow, I think you saved the hardest question for last. I think I've used all my my good ones.
Well, actually, I was thinking you kind of touched on that earlier when you did the 3 things to stay focused on. So
and I was going to reiterate that. And I think the most important one is to stay true to who you are and make sure that you're, keeping your addressable audience in the forefront of your mind of who they are and how they want to be communicated to. And don't be afraid to experiment a little bit and get out of your comfort zone, and realize that it is going to be different, and that's okay.
Exactly. And experiment. We are willing to. This whole experience has given us the ability to accept things differently. And I think that will continue to move forward. So
totally agree.
Test, experiment, see what is working, and then refine.
Yeah, exactly. Sharpen that saw.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Sharpen the saw.
Well, I had a lot of fun. I thank you again for the invitation. It was great to chat, and it's been obviously a very interesting experience for all of us, and it's these types of things that kind of help us formulate strategies and ideas. So thanks for your guys' time and putting this together.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron.
Thank you very much.
Great to chat with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really great.
Well, thanks again, everybody, for hopping on here. We'll make sure to include all Aaron's information if you want to connect with him, put his LinkedIn information so you can see that awesome virtual trade show video that got all that attention. So we'll make sure to do that. If you have any more questions for us or Aaron, make sure to send them to ideas@appliedart.com. We'll make sure we get you in contact with the right people to take care of those questions for you. Again, thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you guys later. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.